You might think like, why the hell is this guy from Atlassian staying on stage talking about developer joy, right? Because we as developers, we actually have the best jobs in of the whole world, right? We are creating something. We're writing just like a few lines of code, and we're creating value for the customer. The customer loves what we do, so we have really impact on the customer directly. So you think that's like, well, we have the best job in the world. We enjoy what we're doing. Why are we talking about developer joy? It is because, actually, you will see that something happened in the last 10 years of software development, right? So 10 years ago, we were writing just like code. Someone was just like, we were throwing it to the IT department. They were just like looking at it, running it on their servers. So a lot has happened actually in between 10 years and now. And it is actually the cloud that actually has happened, right? Now we develop actually for the cloud. So we needed to learn new paradigms, how to develop software. We needed to learn new toolings, AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP, you name it, right? All these new technologies we needed to learn. And then also now everything runs into a small little container. So that's something new for us too, to just like put things in container, let them run, and then see if you just like have a log file and then the container goes down. The first time I was just like, I wanted to look at the log file while the container went down, but of course the container wasn't there anymore. So we had to learn how to deal with all those things. Right? And then we also came the whole microservices. Now, actually, we don't have the whole monolith again, anymore, so we can just like not call a function there, right there, that is just like next to it in our code base. We now need to see just like, okay, we need to write an API so other microservices can consume that. Then what happens if the microservice is not there on the other side? What should we do? We needed to recover from that. So also things like that happened. And then also now that everything runs in the cloud, there are some nasty people that want to hack into our software, and it's now available in the cloud. So we need to protect that. We need to think about security and governance. All of this came on top of what we have done before. And then also Werner Vogel came from AWS and said, you build it, you run it. Thank you very much, Werner Vogel. Now we are not just responsible for building the software, we are also responsible for running the software. So we need to think about observability. We need to just like teach our teams how to deal with incidents, and maybe someone has to be on call. So that has to do something. So all of these things came actually in the last 10 years of software development. And of course, it increased our cognitive load. All of this leads to more cognitive load. We have to keep more in our head. We have to do more things. And don't get me wrong, right? The whole DevOps movement and all the things that you just saw, it is for the better, right? Software quality got better, our products get better. It is for the better, but we're doing more, right? We're getting more responsibility over the whole software development life cycle, plus the operational cycle, right? Or the operational side of things. But now you hear a lot of people just like saying, yeah, we hired this great talent, these software developers, right? And the feature that they put out there, they just like get down. So we don't produce so many features anymore. So how do we get back actually to productivity? And you just saw what we all did more, right? So we did a lot of things more, and now people are telling us, yeah, but you need to also be more productive. You need to crank out the same amount of features than before. And you said, duh, right? Well, we're doing all those things. So where does this obsession come from for productivity? Why are people so obsessed with being productive? And we actually have to look back in the time. So let's travel back in time and discover where this productivity focus came from. Are you okay with me traveling back in time? Yeah? You can just like nod. Yeah? Traveling back in time. I guarantee you I'll bring you back to 2024. So no problem. But I count to 3. And then we're traveling 126 years back in time. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Now we are back in the Bethlehem Steel Factory. The year is 1898. And the Bethlehem Steel Factory had actually some productivity issues. So at that time, there was no Boston Consulting Group to call, or McKinsey's, or whoever you bring in if you have productivity issues, right? And they fix it for you. No. But at this time, the Boston Steel Factory hired one person, and his name was Frederick Winslow Taylor. You might have heard of him. You might have heard of Taylorism. If not, no problem. I will explain it to you. Frederick Winslow Taylor came in, and the first thing that he did was this, just like watching the workers and pulling out his stopwatch. So he was watching the workers and just like measuring everything, right? How long does it take to carry something over from one station to the other station? So he figured out like, okay, these stations need to be closer together to be more productive. So all the things he did. What you also noticed is when the workers were shuffling, they were shuffling coal into the oven, right? They were shuffling coal, and coal was actually falling left and right from those shuffles. So what he did was just like he gave them, so these shuffles were actually made for soil, for just like shuffling soil. They just like used it in the factories. So he gave them custom made shuffles, right? So, and that way he increased the productivity. They could shuffle actually more. So tooling actually helps. But then what you also notice is the workers need to carry a lot, right? Heavy stuff, and they get exhausted at the end of the day. So how much they could carry throughout the day was decreasing, right? Of course, right? So what he did was actually, he gave the workers more pauses. So just like have a break in between, and that way he increased the average, how much people could actually carry throughout the day. So all of these things, right, he did. And what was the result, right? The result was an increase in productivity by 400%. Boom. That's also what we want from software developers, right? We want to increase them by 400%. It's a 400x developers. No, just kidding. Or 4x developers here. No, just kidding. There's also a flip side here, right? Everything comes with a flip side, right? The workers in the factories, they were not supposed to think anymore, right? Because he did all the thinking for the workers. The workers were just like doing repetitive tasks, right? And the managers, actually, he introduced the managers, and the managers were doing the thinking. Now that sounds familiar, yeah? Yeah. All right, good. But hey, get this. It is 126 years ago that we came up with this concept, and it was for factory workers, this productivity concept. Can we still do that with software development, right? So let's go back to the year 2024 and look at how we measure actually developer productivity these days, right? The first job I got was actually, my boss came to me and said, we need to know how productive you are, so please can you tell me how much lines of code did we add last quarter, right? You are laughing. We just like did a developer survey, and leaders are still saying that's, I think 35% of leaders saying that's the way how they measure productivity, how much lines of code get added. But the truth is, I can add a lot of lines of code, look very productive, but get nothing done because I just like add rubbish or just like make my functions longer or whatever. So we figured out this is not a good just like measurement for productivity. All right, so the next thing that we can do is just like measure the number of issues that we move into the done column of our Scrum board. Yeah, that's a better measure, right? Since we just like see how many tasks we're doing, but then we have actually smaller things and bigger things. So we need to weight those things, right? So we add story points. So yeah, how many story points we can do during an iteration and increasing that number, right? Increasing that number. But story points are also not a good measurement for productivity because it's an estimate, right? I do it actually before I do the work. I'm doing the estimate and then I'm doing the work. So even t-shirt sizes doesn't break it. But now you hear a lot people saying about just like, yeah, we measure productivity by measuring the cycle time, how long it takes from idea to launch, or the deployment frequency, how often we deploy our software. All good things, but let's assume we have this magic number of just like, okay, we now know how productivity is measured, right? So when we have these numbers, right, then this number of measuring productivity, let's say 4.5 or whatever the unit is of productivity. I've spoken about productivity for a long time, developer productivity. No one can say actually in which unit we are measuring developer productivity. So that's another thing. But assume we have found that it's 4.5, great. But now the managers come in and say, oh yeah, we need to get better. We need to improve, right? We need to put more pressure on our developers, 10% more story points, 20% faster pull request reviews. Great. Thank you very much, Frederick Winslow Taylor. We are still living in the age of the Bethlehem Steel Factory and trying to improve our productivity by the old kinds of measurements that have worked before. But we have to change, right? We have to change. Software development is different than making steel in a factory, right? Or building cars in a factory. That's just different. So we have to have a different approach. But now people say, and you heard that term, maybe developer productivity, maybe managers are talking about it, but developers talking about developer experience. Let's improve the developer experience. And don't get me wrong, I think this is actually a good term, right? It is actually a good term for describing how to improve things. We need to improve the experience of developers that leads to productivity. But now we have the McKinseys and the Boston Consulting Groups, and they come up with new frameworks that they want to sell to your companies and say, this is how you measure now developer experience, right? So here, team satisfaction, and this is just like you just like screw on that knobs, and then developer experience will explode. So great things. Or even McKinsey has put out this one here, right? How you and then you see that it's like story points completed. It's still in there, right? It's a stupid measurement. So people are just like trying to sell you something, but you have to do it yourself. So this is actually what we do at Atlassian. We don't call it developer experience. We call it, let's create some more developer joy, right? Because we ultimately think that if developers enjoy what they are doing, they will also increase the productivity. So we'll also get better in that. And developer joy can be a lot of things. So one thing is great quality. So think about if you work on great quality code that you really, really, really like, right? You're also productive. Or developer progress, right? How fast you move things through your pipelines, how fast you can go from idea to launch, right? So this is something that I enjoy if I do things fast. If things are just like landing at the customer immediately, right? If I can just like deploy something to the customer immediately, or the value that we create, and this is actually the ultimate developer joy, I think, right? If you talk to customers and they say, Sven, we love it. We love what you have built, right? Really, give us more for that. And I'm just like so proud of it. So taking pride of your work sparks developer joy. And this is the ultimate thing that we want to get out of that, right? We want to have great quality. We want to develop things fast, and we want to enlighten our customers. So how do we get that actually? So, I brought you now, I think 5 stories from 5 different teams at Atlassian, what they did actually to just like improve their developer joy, how they improve their developer joy. And the first story that I have is around this year. And this is actually every team struggles with that. Every software development teams on the world struggle with that because code gets old right after you have written it and put it into a Git repository. Then it's already old, right? It's old code, and you create technical debt, right? Actually, there are some stats around that. 42% of dev time is used to fight technical debt. This is what developers are telling us. And then also 10% of dev teams are actually managing technical debt. Right? Intentionally managing technical debt. So this is just like 10%, right? But 42% struggle with it. So you can see actually that's a downturn. We don't get out of this if we don't do anything about it, right? So the thing is, just like I show you a bunch of code, right? And I just assume this is just like super great code. I love this code. It's super simple. It's super great. Whatever it says, doesn't matter, but it's super great code. Let's assume that. Then I go on vacation, right? And then I just like say, okay, here's my code. I put it into Git. Great. And then I go on vacation and I come back. and then I say, okay, let's look at this great code again when I come back from vacation, and then I see what my coworkers has done with my super nice code. Oh my God, they have added code after code. And I don't want to blame them for that, right? Sometimes things ends up in a mess. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they put some code in on Friday evening or Friday afternoon and said that we fix it on Monday, but Monday there was an issue. So whatever happens, they didn't say, I want to mess up Sven's nice code. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're saying, right? But it happens, right? So how do we deal with that, right? But the first question that we should ask ourselves is actually, what does good code look like? What does good code look like? So, as I said, story from an Atlassian team, the Bitbucket team actually came out and says, yeah, we need to just like have standards for good code, right? What is good code? So they set themselves a bunch of rules, right? So they have their coding guidelines. Bitbucket is done in Python, so that's their Python coding guidelines that they have, right? And you might think like, yeah, class name, a camel case, yeah, but that's just a standard. If you just like want to make your code readable, you need standards for that. But there are tools that check that automatically, but not everything can be actually checked automatically. Maybe not by nowadays code. Maybe if we have some more AI-driven tools, then yes. But for example, single responsibility principle, right? It's the single responsibility principle. Can we check that with code review tools that we have now? Well, maybe, but there's another aspect on that where we need actually code reviews, right? So everyone here in the room is doing code reviews, right? You're actually doing code reviews, right? Yeah, nodding. Yes, I hear that. Great. Love it. But there is something with code reviews. People are just like, I don't like them, right? I don't like put my code out to coworkers. And it has to do something with this. Just giving you an example here. So assuming I have added these lines of code here, right? And put a pull request out, just like invite some reviewers. And the first comment that I get is this. What the fuck, Sven? I say, oh, my God. Okay. But I'm just like, breathe in, breathe out. What do you mean? This code is ugly. So, okay, I'm done with code reviews, right? I don't want to do code reviews. I don't want to put out my code anymore. I'm done with the whole thing about the code reviews. But hey, I'm a professional software developer, so I say, okay, why do you think this code is ugly? And then it comes, yeah, it would be nicer if you'd use a for loop here. I said, nicer, right? A while loop will do the job. Nicer, what do you mean by nicer? So here actually, one advice, if you are that person that gives this comments on code reviews to others, it's this. Don't be a jerk, right? People hate jerks, right? But actually, who has been bullied by a jerk recently? No, please don't raise your hands. I know your coworkers are in the room, so don't tell me. Just like maybe twinkle with the eye, all right? Yeah. Okay. We understand each other. Okay, great. But actually, these are the people why people actually hate code reviews. These are the reasons why people hate code reviews, right? They are the reasons of that. So the Jira team actually said, okay, before we run into these kind of jerks that are out there, we know, we set some rules here. We look at it a little more holistically. We think like the reviewer is actually in this protected bubble. Like the reviewer can feel safe, right? But the author is actually open, right? So they need to open up. They need to open up their work, what they have done, their creativity, whatever, right? Their knowledge. But we need to protect the author here in that case, right? So they set themselves some rules. So first rule is assume competence. Assume the author is competent. We hire great developers. We are actually putting developers through a lot of interviews, so we make sure we have great people. So we assume they are competent to do their jobs. So that's the first thing. Second thing is be constructive in your feedback. This code looks ugly. It's not constructive feedback. It's just like ranting. No, be constructive in your feedback, right? And also explain your reasoning. Explain the reasoning. Explain why do you think a for loop would be nicer. I want to learn too, and that's also the reason why I do code reviews. I want to learn too. So also explain your reasoning about it. So they came up with these rules, right? And they just like simply created a Confluence page with all their rules. Just like, okay, these are just like also rules for authors to just like check the code before. But they learned a lot of things there and play nicer with each other. So you see, no bullying means actually increasing developer joy, right? We are more happy, and we're still increasing the quality of our code. Great. So next thing is a story from the Confluence team. So the Confluence team actually, of course, when you check in the code, what happens then? The build kicks off, right? And the test says, okay, sometimes the test says, you run the test and says red. Say, oh my God, what happened here? Why is the test red? What you do is the next thing is just like you open your IDE, you just like look at the changes that made. Maybe you look at the log files of the testing tool and see what happened. You dig deeper into it. All of a sudden, 30 minutes are gone and you can't find the reason why the test failed. What's the next thing you do? Well, let's rerun the test, right? Let's rerun the test and look what's happening, and boom, it's green, all good. We can leave and go on with the next task. No, stop there. Right. We just like have detected a flaky test. So we have to do something. All right, I'm 20 minutes in. It's time for a commercial. See you after the break.
Is seeing red build after red build getting old? Is rerunning your failed jobs getting you down? Is waiting on those failed jobs to finish making you crazy? Deterministic Reliability is here to help. With our handy-dandy flaky test monitoring system, we will, eventually, automatically bypass those flaky tests. For 4 easy payments of free, you too can save time, ship quality code faster, be more productive, feel so much better when you go to work every day. You will be happier, your team will be happier, you'll stop dying inside, you'll stop banging your head against your desk, you'll stop replacing computers that are in a rage against the wall. Sorry. It's just a little close to home. Call 1-800-Atlassian today to get your free flake monitoring system.
No, don't call Atlassian. This is just like an internal tool that the Confluence team wrote to help actually other teams to detect their flaky tests. And it goes like this. It's pretty simple, right? You create a pull request. The build and test kicks off. Test fails. Flaky test monitor says, hello, let's rerun the test. So that flaky test monitor reruns the test. Do it 3 times or 4 times, and then the test passes and say, haha, I just discovered a flaky test. So what the flaky test monitor does then is actually mark them tests as skip tests. So we bypass the test for a while, but also add a comment to the pull request because some human have to actually look at it and see just like, what is it that makes it flaky? Can we remove the whole test, or do we need to change the test, right? Or is just the code flaky? And then also we got a message through Slack that the team should look at this flaky test, and that's actually saved. I think we found more than 100 flaky tests in the last quarter with that, and bypassed them. So it makes us actually faster. And the thing is, less frustration, right? Going in there for half an hour, finding why the test fails, and then rerun the test and find out that's a flaky test. That's what a bot can do, right? The bot can figure out that before. We don't have to do. So less frustration and more developer joy. So I actually love dev flow. So I mean, like probably every developer, I like to be in that flow stage where I can just like code. It's getting dark outside. I didn't notice because I'm just like concentrating on the problem. That's great. But unfortunately, software development is not just about coding. We have much more than that. We have also build and test phase. We also deploy phase, right? And we can optimize the hell out of that. You can just like go from hours to minutes in the build and test, but just like run your builds and tests in parallel, right? That you can do, create artifacts and grab them. whatever, right? Or deployment, we just like deploy some more microservices. So we split up our monolith into microservices and we can go from minutes to seconds. But there is actually one big phase in software development that takes a lot of time, a lot of the whole like run through time here, the cycle time. And that's the review phase. It actually can take days. So another story from another Confluence team, actually, they actually had that problem. And they measured it. How long on average does it take from opening the pull request to merge it back into the main branch? And it takes them 3 days from an average from opening to the pull request to merge it back, right? 3 days for the developer of waiting and working on something else and then coming back and said, oh, now that I see all the comments on my pull request, I need to rethink, why did I do that actually? It's 3 days ago. It's quite a while ago. And then getting back into that and fixing things, right? So one team actually has that problem, right? And you can see all the open pull requests from that team and the attached reviewers. So why don't reviewers actually go in and do the pull request review? Right? That's a question that we ask ourselves. It might be someone just like didn't see the notification, right? Or the pull request was too large or whatever, right? So they closed it again. So they actually had a team lead called Punit Arora. And Punit actually did the following. Punit got up early in the morning and said, hey, before you just like go into the flow state of coding, can you please review the pull request? And guess what, right? It helped the team to just like be faster with pull requests, right? So also there, someone missed the notification, fine, but Punit remind them of just like, hey, do it for your coworkers because you also want to have your pull request reviewed pretty quickly. And then they said, okay, Punit, great, but hey, we know you're a busy person, so it's not your job, so we replace you. And Punit said, what? Yeah, we replace you by a bot. The bot can do that better. And they called it the Punit bot, right? And now the Punit bot is running and helping actually around 30 Atlassian software development teams to just like get pinged for these open pull requests, right? And they cut down their cycle time from 3 days to 1.2 days for the pull request, right? What they also figured out is that, oh yeah, this pull request is too big, so let's make it smaller. So it's not just like the notification itself. They learned how to they got aware of they need to be faster at pull requests. This is the learning that they got from that Punit bot. So it means actually less wait time for the developers and more developer joy at the end, right? We don't have to wait that long. Our pull requests get approved or we get comments on the pull request pretty frequently. So I told you about flow. Flow is great. I love flow. Flow is everywhere, right? Flow is in software development and flow is in traffic. So let's set back a little bit and see how traffic flows. So let's have a normal junction, and that's a simulation that I show you. How many cars can pass a junction if we have no rules at all, right? So that's a junction, and the simulation just simulates how many cars can pass it in a minute. And in this junction, 191 cars can pass this junction in a minute when we have no rules and cars have to figure out their way through the junctions. Now, let's add some processes. Let's add some rules to that, and let's make it strong, right? Let's add some traffic lights. So you will see that cars are going full speed, right? They can go full speed, but other cars have to wait. And now the other cars can go full speed, right? And in that case, actually, we increase the traffic flow to 235. So processes gives us maybe more control over how many cars can actually pass this junction, and we can get, if they go full speed, can pass more stuff to the junction. But what does it mean for software development? It means more processes. We are stopping and waiting for other teams until they're done, and then we can go full speed, right? There must be a better solution for that, right? We hate wait time, right? So let's just like eliminate the wait time by just like doing a roundabout, right? These are just like very famous in Europe, doing roundabouts. People love them. And you can see there's actually also a fast lane. The car just like comes in. So work got slotted in whenever there is a slot free, right? So we can just like put it in a row and slot it in. Great. This is more like the agile way of working, right? We get stuff done. We are in this cycle, right? So great. But that's not all, right? We shouldn't stop there, because there is some other junction that is just like the ultimate flow junction, and is traffic flow was 360 here. It is the stack interchange. And you will see that cars don't have to stop. They just like merge into the lane without really slowing down. They just like merge into the lane. They don't have to stop, right? And you see the traffic flow is 1099 here. So how do we build a stack interchange for software development? How can we get more autonomous from other cars on the road? Autonomous teams. That's the solution, right? We run autonomous teams that can run with their own speed, don't depend on other people, on other areas of your organization, right? Of course, those teams needs to be highly aligned. They need to be just like autonomous, but they need to be highly aligned. But what does that mean, right? It means like we have a designer on the team. We have developers, of course, on the team, QA people on the team, and ops people on the team. So everyone, we don't have to wait for other people, right? Well, that's a great theory, right? We have everyone on the team, we work on one feature, everyone is just like flowing. Great theory, but in practice, it didn't really work, right? Because of this here. The Trello team actually discovered that for them. So the Trello team actually had QA people, right? But the ratio is 1 to 30. 1 QA person, 30 developers. So that doesn't really scale, right? We don't have development teams where just like we have 30 developers on the team. That doesn't really scale, right? So how do we solve that problem that we don't make the QA a bottleneck anymore? How do we do that? We don't want to wait for QA, but we can't have a QA person full time on our team all the time, right? That needs coordination, another process, blah, blah, blah. But the Trello team did something differently. So they looked at it, how the Trello team is actually working, and you see just like the developers were responsible for the automated tests, and then for the manual test or the exploratory test, it was the QA department. So also here, just like they said, okay, what are we doing? We're giving everything to the developers, and we call ourselves quality assistants. So we are assisting the developers to do both the automated test and the exploratory test, so they don't have to wait for us. Sounds great, right? But I will show you how they actually do it, how we just like not putting more work on our shoulders of the developers, but give them the responsibility for the quality of what they do. They call it QA kickoffs. So in a QA kickoff, the developer that is supposed to write a feature or a task, right? They just like team up with the QA person, and then they write before actually they write the code. So they look at the user stories and say, how would you test that user story? So they write everything down, a whole test plan, right? And then the QA person leaves and leaves the developers alone, right? The developer is doing the implementation, the testing, the demo, and the deployment on their own without the QA involved anymore. Well, that's not entirely true. We still have the demo where the QA person can take part and look at it. But otherwise, there is no bottleneck anymore, right? So once we have the QA kickoff, we can do the implementation. We test it according to our test plan that we have set up in the QA kickoff. We do a demo and we deploy it, right? So, but that's not the only thing that QA does, right? They are also organizing something we call blitz test. So they are assistant for blitz testing a new feature. So blitz testing is a very simple thing. We just like reserve some time, we come together, every developer is just like testing the new feature, testing the hell out of the new feature, reporting some stuff that they found, but the QA people, they just like summarizing it, they put it in Jira, so we know what to do, how to fix it, so they are doing that. But it's a team actually that takes on the responsibility to deliver the right quality, right? So that's the team responsibility that we set there. Right? And then also what they do is actually they're setting up test environments. So developers don't have to just like care about just like setting up a test database or test servers or something. That's actually done by the QA team. They just like helping the developers to provide flow, and then just like being the, if you know team topologies, the enablement team actually for the software developers, so they can do their job fast and efficiently and effective. All right, so getting all this in the QA cycle, the Trello team was super happy about that. It increased the cognitive load of the developers, right? And then sparked some more developer joy. All right, so we talked a little bit about how we went from just like the flow state when we write code, testing, deploying, and just like making the right quality. Let's move a little bit before we actually write the feature, right? Let's talk about product people and developers. Sometimes I think they live on different planets. They don't talk the same language, right? How do we connect them better? How do we connect the product people that are actually defining what the developers should build better with, so the why better with the what? And I give you an example here, and it's a true example that I have experienced, and it might resonate with something that you might have experienced too. So I got this user story from a product manager say, as a user, I want to export the data so I can have it in an Excel file. Well, it seems like the simple thing, right? It's just like the user data, they want to export it so I can have it in an Excel file. I wrote the code, I added a button so they can just like download the data as an Excel file. Great, right? But then they came, oh, okay, you mean the data, right? Oh, we don't want all the data. We just like want specific data in that Excel file. So I said, okay, let's rewrite that user story. So as a user, I want to export the important data so I can have it in an Excel file. Great. So that was just like, okay, good. Just like one times forth and back and forth. That's fine. So I wrote the code. I came back, said, here it is. And they said, great, let's try that out. Oh, it's an Excel file, right? Yeah, that's what the user story said. Oh, we didn't know there's a difference between a CSV file and an Excel file, so we need actually a CSV file. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it again. So as a user, I want to export the important data so I can have it in a CSV file. Great. So I did that, and they said, oh, super happy. Right? Important data, CSV file, great. So we take the file now and import it into our CRM database, right? So we have the data in there too, and said, what? What are you doing? You're exporting our CRM system. They actually have an API, so we could just shuffle the data over. So I was super frustrated about that, right? We should have talked more in the beginning. I shouldn't have just like taking the user story and start right away. I should have actually been more involved in what is actually the problem we want to solve here. It was not just like exporting the data to an Excel file. It was exporting the important data so I can just like import it into the CRM system. That's the user story. But I don't want to blame the product people, right? They're doing a great job. They're doing a lot of research, a lot of measurements, interviews, experiments, prototypes, all these things. That's what they do, right? And then what the next step is, they squeeze it into the small little user story. And we should build the running software, right, as software development. We should assume all those things. So we just like think about just like how can we work better together? That's actually also the Jira team again that thought about just like how can we get that in a better kind of process? How can we get product people and developers work better together, right? So we actually looked at the problem and say, okay, what are the developers doing? Well, they are actually responsible for the make phase. They create the software, right? What are the product people doing? Well, they actually are responsible for the wonder, what we call the wonder phase. What's the problem really that we solve? What is all the research for it? But that's not all. We also have defined something like the explore phase. So once we have identified the problem, we also need to just like, what are possible solutions out there? Not the first solution will be the best, right? We need to just like explore some more things. And then also don't forget about the measuring phase, the impact that we are creating. We're measuring the impact. So we set ourselves goals. So we need to involve developers actually more in all those phases, right? They need to be involved in everything. Did I hear just like cognitive load again? Right, yeah. So no, but it's actually important, right? We need to just like help them. And it's not like they are fully involved in the problem phase. They are kindly a little bit involved in the problem phase and then more in the create phase, where the product people actually, they are more involved in the problem phase, solution phase a little bit, but then back in the measuring the impact. So we just like said, okay, good. We just like define for every team at Atlassian, we will find that process here. So we're doing a project kickoff where we invite everyone. product people, IT people, ops people, designers, right? QA people, everyone just like needs to know why we're building this, what we're building, right? And then we build prototypes, right? We build not just like Figma prototypes from the product people, also the developers are just like saying, is that really technically feasible? Before we actually go into the make phase. In the make phase, we are running regular demos to show actually the progress of what we're building. So also the product people are seeing what we're doing, right? And then we're doing something we call gold signals measures in the measurement phase, where we just like look at what is the impact that we are creating. And we are involving everyone into those phases. So let's talk a little bit about demos, right? Because we're doing this demos regularly. We're not doing that in person anymore. We're doing that through Zoom meetings or through Loom videos. But the one thing here is really important how we run those demos, right? First, as I said, they are open. Everyone can join. I can watch all kinds of demos that the software teams have been doing. They are open. So I can actually watch them on YouTube because we're just like distributed over the whole world. But I can also join the live session if they do it in a live session. Then what's also important is they are focused on the outcome. So we're showing customer values. No product manager wants to see the implementation details from software developers. So it's important that we show the customer values. So actually, we can also discuss and challenge the solution that we're seeing, right? And this is important. This is super important that we see just like, oh yeah, we thought this was a good idea, right? But now that we see that, maybe we should go back to the customer and show it to the customer before we move on, right? It's important that we get early feedback for our software. So we discuss and challenge the solution, and then also don't forget to celebrate, right? You're creating something together and you have everyone just like together there, so celebrate your wins, right? If you have just like put out the software or just like parts of the software already tested by customers, just like celebrate the wins of your team, right? Because you're sitting together, you're building this stuff together, and development should make fun and joy, right? So all of this means less rework frustration, right? We don't have to just like go in, deploy something to the customer. Customer comes back and say, no, that's not the right thing that we want to do. We get early feedback for everything. We know what we want to build, so we improve the product just like right away in the beginning. And it means more developer joy at the end. Now, you saw this five stories from 5 different teams at Atlassian, and you might think about just like, yeah, but what would Frederick Winslow Taylor say, right? How do you measure that, right? How do you measure that we are now more productive or have a better experience or enjoy things more, right? Yeah, so it was not Frederick Winslow Taylor that said that, but Peter Drucker said, hey, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So we need to measure something. And if you're starting with measuring and you're building microservices, then take a look at the DORA metrics. It's a great proven thing that if you score high in all those DORA metrics, you're also effective in your software development. But you should look at what is the problem for your team. You should not just blindly copy the DORA metrics or the space metrics, if you're familiar with that. No, you should just like look at what is the problem that we have in a team. If you're running mobile software, if you're building mobile software, deployment frequency doesn't make sense, right? You don't want to deploy to the App Store 5 times a day. That doesn't make sense, right? So look at your own problems that you have, right? And discuss that as a team and measure this thing that you just like wanna measure, right? It might be change failure rate. It might be how many bug resolutions you have, right? If that is a problem that you have too many bugs in your software, do that. Take your measurements and put them in a tool like Compass here. That's our own developer experience platform that we just went GA. So you can see just like all the stats of that. But it's not just about the measurements that you do. It's also about setting baselines, right? You also want to know when things go wrong. So we have this DevOps health, so you can set baselines for all your measurements that you do. Don't just like take 20 measurements in there, just like start small and see where you can expand, right? But the thing is, deployment frequency might go down. Right, you see that, and it turns red here. Deployment frequency goes down, but that might not be a problem. Right? It looks like it's a problem, but you need to add context to the numbers. And that's the important thing. You need to look at it and say, yeah, of course, deployment frequency goes down. We're just like working on very, very complicated part of some subsystems, right? So we don't deploy that often this week, right? We will deploy again in the next months. We will be up again. So all of this is cool. So how do you do that? We are having a weekly ritual with everyone, with the IT department also involved. We call check ops. And in check ops, actually, we just like look at the metrics and add context to the metrics. Right? So that's what we do. And then we discuss things and we take actions. If we need to take actions, we write them down and we just like implement them in the next cycle, right? So we actually have built check ops directly into Compass. So you can do that right in the tool. You can say what went well, what could have been done better, and what could we improve. So you have the metrics right next to the actions that you want to take, right? So I told you that every team is different. Every team needs to see their own problems, and then every team should have their own metrics. It's kindly right? It's kindly right. But I lied to you because we have one metric that we measure with all development teams at Atlassian, and it's this, right? How many hours do you spend on changing the business? How many hours do you spend on changing the business, on building stuff for our customers? We want to measure that, right? And it's great, right? How many hours we spend on changing the business? But that's not all. We're not just like there for changing the business. We also need to make sure that we keep the lights on, right? We also spend time on that, infrastructure, bug fixing, all the things. But what is a good ratio between changing the business on one side and keeping the lights on the other side, right? So we set some goals for the teams. We say actually for more than 55%, we want you to spend on changing the business, and less than 35% you can spend on keeping the lights on over a longer time period, right? So this is how we just like divide it. Now you might think, Sven, go back to school. You can't do the math, because 55 plus 35 is 90, right? Where's the missing 10%, right? And that's actually where the improvement comes in. 10% of the time we give actually our developers to spend on developer joy, to build these punit bots, to come up with code review guidelines, to build a flaky test detector, whatever, right? Whatever helps them to overcome those challenges in developer experience, we give them 10% of their development time to do this actually. All right. How do we measure that? Well, we just like put labels on issues in Jira, and then we can just like have this here. This is Atlassian Analytics, so we can just like see how much time the team spent. Here, that's developer productivity or developer joy, right? Team increased that in that week or months in that month, and we're measuring over time, right? So, how do you now measure productivity, right? I gave you some hints. So, but GitHub did an experiment. They call it the Good Day Project. And what they did is actually they asked their software developers, how good was your day, right? How productive did you feel today? And you know, as software developers, some days we feel more productive, and some days we feel less productive, right? So that's always just like some days we just like feel, oh, we didn't get anything done. So what GitHub did is actually they also looked at the numbers, right? How many pull requests does this people do? How many lines of code? Blah blah blah, all the things, and tried to just like see if they can find some productivity signs in there. And guess what? They couldn't find a correlation between those two things, right? So how do you actually find out? Oh yeah, poor Octocat here. How do you find out this, right? Why is it this way? Because actually software development is not done like this, right? 12 days for the idea phase, we can cut that down. Then the planning phase, we need to also cut down. And then we just like have the review phase, the deploy phase. Software development is not a production line. You can't treat it like a production line, right? We are doing creative work. We're doing new things. We're not building the same car over and over again, right? We're building something new every day. And we don't know actually how long things take because we can run into problems. We all have experienced that. So we can't treat software development as a production line. So can we do measurements at all? And how do we know actually what are the problem areas, right? So actually, this is also an important statement here, quote, measure what is important, but don't make important what you can measure. But how can we actually find out what is important? The answer is clear. Ask your developers, right? If you ask the developers, they actually know the answer. They know what bothers them. They know where they have problems. You don't have to just like build a whole dashboard of things here and there. I've seen that people want to do that. And then we can pinpoint exactly to that number. So we have a problem here. And then you ask to set the developers, we know you're struggling with this. And the developer says, we know, right? We already know. You don't have to tell us. But you spend a lot of time just like trying to measure things. So what we do is actually, we're doing these developer experience surveys or developer joy surveys, where we ask actually the developers, are you satisfied with your speed to ship quality code? Are you satisfied with your waiting time, waiting on builds and other stuff? Are you satisfied with the execution independence, right? Do you depend on too many teams? Are you satisfied with how you execute things? Are you satisfied with your access to tools, practices, and processes? Or is that too much or too little? How about the effort of managing external standards like security and governance? Is that balance okay? How about this time? Are you satisfied with that? Managing your code, pipeline, and infrastructure. What about the ramp-up time for new developers, right? Do they need too much time if you get new developers on the team to ramp up, to be at that state that they are productive? And how is your developer satisfaction overall? How do you do that? So I want you to just like help me to find out what from these things are your biggest challenge. So if you could please scan this QR code right now, put on your phone, scan this QR code, and tell me from your experience, daily experience, choose one of these things. What is your developer joy kryptonite? What are you really, really struggling with? Is it speed to ship quality code? Is it the waiting time? You're waiting too much on other teams or build systems? Is it the execution independence to just like get things done on your own? Is it the access to tools, processes, and practices? Is it security and governance, external standards? Is it managing your pipelines, the CI/CD systems, build systems, whatever, or the infrastructure? Is it bringing on new developers? That's your biggest challenge that you have. Or is it your general developer satisfaction? What is your biggest challenge in your software development? So let's try to see. It's on this side. Where are you going? All right, cool. We have some live stats here. Great. 130 people are already in. 133. That looks phenomenal. All right. So it is a little bit of hat by hat between execution independence and developer satisfaction. Speed to ship quality code catching up a little bit. Oh yeah, it's now up actually with execution independence. Great. Ramp up time doesn't seem to be a big problem. Effort managing external standards doesn't seem to be a big problem. And access to tools, processes seems to be all right. But still, for some of you, this is the biggest challenge. Thank you very much for just like helping me with this small experiment to see also what else in the room, how other people think about just like their developer joy challenges. So we are actually measuring our developer joy, right? But we're not just like doing that. So we're just like asking, yeah, are you satisfied with that? So they can just like choose on a scale from 1 to 10. But I told you, every team is different. And what might be a challenge for one team might be not for another team. So we also asked, like, is that actually important for your team, right? Do that on a scale from 1 to 10. And out of these two numbers, we're calculating a so-called opportunity score. So the opportunity score, you can see here, we have this traffic light system of red, yellow, and green, right? So if you're in this corridor here, things are you're slightly satisfied with this, and it's slightly important. So it's just like here in that green corridor. The balance seems to be all right between importance and satisfaction. If you go below here, right, things seems to be important, but people are not satisfied with it. So this is an important thing that you should tackle. So if you ask your developers, what's the biggest challenge? Look at these things first. You should tackle these things. If you end up in that area here, you see just like satisfaction is high, importance is low. Maybe that is something that you don't have to ask in your next developer experience survey anymore, and add some other stuff to it. So we're doing these things regularly. And if you want to learn more about that, we have this developer experience survey put out publicly. Just wait before taking a picture. You can just like go directly to this bit.ly link and just like go in. It's free. It's a free resource. We have written everything up, how to calculate this opportunity score, what are the questions that we ask our developers, and then also just like how we apply this traffic light system where we see just like you're in the red, you should do something about that. So you just like saw that you measure your problem, but then you give people your developer experience or the developer joy time, like 10%, right? Try to fix things, right? Try to do it. You saw just like the conference team were doing the flaky test detector. So encourage the team to fix the way they work and try to fix things. But it's great if one team just like does something like the punit bot, right? It's great, but all teams at Atlassian actually can benefit from that. So also it's important that you not just like try to fix things, but also invest time in spreading the learnings, right? Spread what you have learned so other teams can benefit from that. So for example, here the punit bot, the team actually wrote up a blog post here about the punit bot, and then just like wrote why they did it, how they did it, how it works. So as I said, now it's 27 teams or more are running the punit bot on a daily basis by just like sharing their experience. All right, to sum this up here, take your measurements, but think about it. Measurements are just giving you signals, right? You can't just like, first you need to run the surveys and just like identify the problem areas that you have in your team. And then you can set measurements in place and see if the things you're doing are actually improving, right? Or just like showing that you're in the right way of improving. But these are just signals. It's not your developer satisfaction or your developer joy or developer productivity. So give this to your autonomous teams, right? Teams that are doing things autonomously, and also give them time, right? Give them time to try it and fix things. Because what you want to do is actually, you want to improve the quality, the developer quality. You want to improve the progress, how fast things move through the pipelines. And you want to improve the value that you deliver to your customers. And I always want to do a Venn diagram in my talks. So here it is, right in the middle there. This is actually where developer joy is happening, right? And guess what? If you increase all these three things, if you get better in all these three things, you're also productive, right? And you enjoy what you're doing. So you all became developers for a reason, right? Because it's fun. It's fun to develop software. It's fun to use new technologies, to be just like at the front of new things. It's really fun. Don't forget that, right? Don't forget to have fun and improve your developer joy. Thank you very much.